Welcome to the weather forecast on CIA TV channel. Dear friends, in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that will affect the United States over the next 7 days. A major change in weather patterns is coming to the United States over the next few days, bringing more severe weather, including strong winds, large hail, and tornadoes. We'll start with what's happening across the country today. We're expecting more severe weather over the next few days due to this particular storm system, which is focused primarily on the north central plains, the Midwest, and also back into the Ohio Valley, where any potential for severe weather is still possible. Today's severe weather event, we actually had a tornado in western Illinois, so that was an exception. But other than that, what we're seeing is mostly large hail and strong winds over a widely dispersed area. This may surprise a lot of people, but we actually have a 70% chance of a tropical storm forming in the central Atlantic within the next 24 hours. The reason why this is a big deal is because this will be the first named storm of the season, even though it will be a fish storm. So this is at least a step toward a slightly more active hurricane season. Again, we're expecting an active hurricane season across the entire Atlantic. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the type of weather that's going to impact the United States over the next few weeks. Oh, look, we're going to look at the average airflow in our jet stream, starting with what's going on right now. Right now, we have this trough along the west coast, which is helping to support the increased risk of severe weather over the next few days. But as we get closer to the middle of the week, that high pressure system will move a little further west, which will bring at least some relief, especially to the northeast. But we'll continue to see at least some small troughs return along the west coast and in the Rocky Mountains, which means we'll likely have some shortwave trough eruptions across the northern plains and Midwest, which will continue to bring a high risk for at least some scattered showers and thunderstorms, in addition to severe weather. By Thursday and Friday, I think that pattern will be a little quieter. We'll still have a chance of 1 or 2 troughs coming right through the Rocky Mountains or in the northern plains, which could still bring some severe weather on Friday and Saturday. But we think overall our flow is going to be a little more regional, which means that our chances of severe weather this weekend are going to be at least a little bit lower. But there will still be severe weather. I just don't expect it to be that significant unless you're in the northern plains or the upper Midwest. Things are going to be quiet again in the southern plains and the southeast. And then next week is when I think we'll start to see troughs forming in the high plains, which means things could be a little quieter over the weekend and early next week. But we'll start to see some big troughs again around July 4. Now, that's again a general overview of what's coming over the next 7 to 10 days. And then there could be some more severe weather as we get closer to July 4, which could be quite significant. But I want to point out that temperatures will still be very warm over the next few days, although the warmest air we're facing will move out on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, let's talk more about the severe weather potential over the next few days, and we'll start with today. We have a slight risk of severe weather across the Great Lakes back into northern Kansas, and a slight threat from the Texas Panhandle back into the upper peninsula of Michigan, where damaging winds will be the biggest concern today. We're also expecting widespread storm activity here, so what are you prepared for? Overall, severe weather will be fairly isolated to scattered. Large hail is also possible, but nothing too significant is expected in that area. Then there's the potential for a few tornadoes. That's really not something that's easy to forecast here. Then on Tuesday, the severe weather risk will extend from New England all the way into the high plains, where all the severe weather threats are again possible. But the severe weather will generally be fairly isolated across the board, with our most concentrated area being back in the high plains, where damaging winds and large to very large hail are the biggest concerns. We don't really expect much hail if you're back in the northeast or even back in the Ohio Valley. I think damaging winds will really be the only concern in those areas. There's also a chance for 1 or 2 isolated tornadoes, mainly in Wyoming, western Nebraska, northern Colorado, and western South Dakota. Then on Wednesday, our severe weather threat will continue across the northern plains, Midwest, back into the Northeast, and even a small area in the Southeast, where there's a chance for damaging winds, hail, and a few tornadoes. We do think we're going to see a higher likelihood in the future outlook, primarily back to the northern plains in the Midwest, where there could be a strong wind corridor that does significant damage, and maybe even a few tornadoes around the Twin Cities and Iowa. Now let's take a look at the severe weather day by day, and we'll start with today. Right now, we're going to see a line of showers and thunderstorms from Des Moines, Iowa, back into central Wisconsin, where there's a chance for scattered strong winds, a little bit of large hail, and maybe a brief tornado around 4 to 5 o'clock. These storms will continue, but be aware that they're pretty chaotic. We think that in this environment, around 7 to 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to see showers and thunderstorms continue into southern Wisconsin, back into central Iowa, and also just outside of Kansas City, where strong winds, large hail, and isolated tornadoes will continue. Then around 10 to 11 o'clock tonight, mostly just rain across areas like Iowa. We want to point out that with these storms, there's going to be a chance for some localized flooding, mostly in eastern Nebraska, back into Iowa, and also into southern Wisconsin. So back in the Central Plains, the storms will start a little later than what we'll see in the Midwest. I think the storms will start around 5 to 6 in central Kansas, back into southern Nebraska, where there will be damaging winds and hail, and a low risk of tornadoes. If we think there will be tornadoes today, it will probably be in southeast Nebraska, maybe an isolated supercell somewhere where there will be enough wind shear to produce tornadoes, but overall, most of these storms will be hail and wind. And by 9 to 10 o'clock, things will largely collapse, but the damaging winds will continue with any storms that are still severe right after sunset. Then on Tuesday, our severe weather threat will continue across the Central Plains, where storms will break out right around 3 to 4 o'clock Central Time, back into southeast Wyoming and some areas just outside of Denver. Damaging winds and hail are the primary concern initially, but if a tornado or 2 forms in eastern Wyoming, that could move into western Nebraska with a tornado threat. We could even see a few isolated thunderstorms trying to break out in northeastern Colorado, so keep an eye out for a tornado threat that could potentially increase here tomorrow afternoon and early evening across northeastern Colorado and western Nebraska. Those storms will eventually regroup around 7 to 8, transitioning into primarily a damaging wind threat across central and western Nebraska. There could still be a storm moving into central and eastern Nebraska late in the evening and overnight. Then, as we head into Wednesday morning, that line of storms will push into parts of the upper Midwest. The remnants of that storm line will move into the Midwest, and we could see storms flare up again in the afternoon, back around and just south of the Twin Cities, and also into Iowa, with damaging winds, large hail, and maybe an isolated tornado or 2. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. We think the overall tornado risk will remain low if our storm regime is more focused and not really sporadic. But if things do eventually trend toward sporadic supercells, we could definitely see a higher tornado risk here because there's going to be more wind shear with the shortwave trough. So there's a lot to keep an eye on here over the next couple of days. We're expecting to continue to have showers and thunderstorms with the possibility of severe weather still possible even on Thursday across the Midwest. Overall, a lot of days that we're talking about severe weather. We could see tornadoes, we could see very large hail, we could see damaging winds, but it will be very sporadic. These are not the typical severe weather outbreaks. Instead, we could still see significant severe weather, but it will be small features. Then on Friday and Saturday, our weather pattern will be a little less active. We will still see at least some severe weather, but we don't think it will be significant, just localized to widespread severe weather across the northern plains and the Midwest this weekend. And then early next week is when I think a high pressure system will form across the Great Plains. And if this does happen, we'll likely see at least a break in the severe weather just before July 4th. I think the severe weather will return around and just after July 4th. So be prepared. This is still an active weather pattern here for at least the next couple of days. We will continuously update the storm situation in the next news. Please subscribe to the channel to follow. Thank you for watching the news on CIA TV channel.